The next part of the sprite sheets that we're going to take a look at involves objects, understanding a little bit about how objects work and so forth. So we're going to focus on objects today. In the next class, we'll look at the example program. So one has a lot of different resources that come along with it. Now over here in Microsoft Visual Studio, we're going to do a File, New Project. And we're going to choose ConsoleApp.NET Framework.
It says you need to sign in.
Oh, does it? What if you could get a different computer?
I don't know. Keep signing out or something. This one I can click file.
Doesn't make any sense. Because mine says logged in on my computer.
Yeah.
Maybe get a different one each time.
Must be.
But then they're bound to all been logged in by this point. Of course, if you go to turn in your project, you have to sign in there, and so maybe that signs me out or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
That could be.
Okay, I'm on project. What did you say after that?
So you do File, New Project, and then you choose ConsoleApp.NET Framework.
Console like that. Alright, yeah.
This is actually the huge part of game development is object-oriented programming. A lot of places will use C++ because of its power and objects, but C# has just as much powerful as C++. The idea on this I mentioned last time, but really didn't go into any kind of detail. If we take a look at creating a Star Wars character. Well, that game, the Lego one, Star Wars, where it has like a whole bunch of characters. You could define everything individually for each one of those characters. But it'd be overkill because they share a lot of characteristics. How they move is similar. Could be that some move faster, could be some jump higher, but those are things you can control with values. And so what we do is we define what is a Star Wars character.
I think they all jump the same.
Do they all jump the same?
Yeah.
No.
There's just a normal jump and a double jump. Unless you used whatever the one's name was, jetpack.
So they may be a lot closer than I think even.
And R2D2.
Oh, okay.
You can fly.
You can fly.
Kind of. It works a lot.
Now that's object-oriented programming. And what we do is we create a class. So we're going to do a file. What do we do? File, new file. No, I'm lying to you. You can probably do it that way. But if you do window, view. Where's project at? Solution Explorer. I'm probably looking right at it and I don't see it. This should work. Oh, here it is. Add. Okay, that's it. So Solution Explorer is the one we want. So choose View and choose Solution Explorer. So used to it being over here. And then you can right click on this and you can choose Add. And there's a class down here. Now when this pops up, we're going to choose Visual C# items and we'll just choose class. And I'm going to call it this Star Wars character. Now I put underscores in between them. Some books will tell you things that need to be uppercase, some need to be lowercase. It'll take either one. Now we got two files here now. We got program.cs and got Star Wars character.cs. The Star Wars character.cs is going to be our definition of what do we define for a Star Wars character. I can come over here and I can type public. What do you think if you had a character on that game? What might be a characteristic you want to track? Yeah.
That we want to track.
Yeah. Like you ready to describe that little robot guy, the short one that goes along.
I mean, moving, jumping, like if you a lightsaber turning it on and off.
Could be. Very, very basic one, though. How would you refer to that shiny gold guy?
I can't think of his name either. I don't know.
What's that? It says C3PO.
See,
But his name, right?
oh, yeah.
So we would need character name. So maybe I'll say C name. Like you say, maybe you would keep track of, I'll call it Boolean. Well, they can use a lightsaber or not. Obviously, C3PO, R2D2 wouldn't use a lightsaber, would they? Let's say if their jumping was different. Maybe you'd indicate how high they can jump. So you'd have public jump height. Of course, there should be an integer. Integer jump height. In our case, some of the games that we've started creating already, we've had a character moving, right? So speed. So public float speed, like that. That's probably good enough to demonstrate this. Okay, so this is how we define our Star Wars character. So over here, I click the program.cs tab, or you can double click the program.cs over here. I'm going to come down here in the static void main. I'll say Star Wars, and I'll start typing it. And you see Star Wars character. C3P. Oh, that's bad. What did it just say? C3PO? Oh. Like that. That's the name we're giving it. Equals. And then I'll say Star Wars character, beginning parentheses, closing parentheses. Equals new Star Wars character. There we go. This is creating an instance of a Star Wars character, which means it's inheriting everything we just defined for the Star Wars character. So now I could say C3PO dot character name is equal to, he's got an official name, like C3PO artificial translator. I don't know. But we'll give it a name. Then I say C3PO dot, and you see there's other items here. Jump height. C3PO shouldn't be able to jump, should he? I don't think I've ever seen him jump. So that should be 0. C3PO dot, see lightsaber. I've never seen C3PO use a lightsaber. C3PO dot speed. Maybe that's 2. Now you notice I did not have to define all these items, did I? Because they were already defined with my object. And this is how, if you got an object defined correctly and it's in a separate file like that, you can reuse that code. So if I'm working in a game development house, and would you say that for the most part all 3D characters move the same? Use your controller, goes here, goes right, goes left, so forth. Yeah, kind of the same, right? Difference is the animation. You know, what the character's looking like while it's running. Could be the jump height. But for the most part, it's just the outer look that looks the same. So they can reuse these. So if they got this all defined exactly with the object oriented, then when they come up with a new game, they don't have to write it from scratch. They can use that existing library, that existing object, and build upon it. That's how they can create a brand new game so quickly. Is because they do that. I say quickly because I'm assuming they don't start on a new Call of Duty until the old one comes out. I'm just guessing. Or is it 2 years?
Well, now they have like 2 years to develop the game.
Do they?
So, like, Black Ops 3 came out. Once they're done with that, they start, doing the next game. So.
Yeah, I know for a while there, they had 2 companies creating the Call of Duties.
Yeah, Treyarch and
Activision?
Infinity Ward.
Infinity Ward.
Yeah,
Okay.
Treyarch's the one that owns all of them.
Oh, okay.
Now they have Sledgehammer.
Okay. And the idea on that, again, is you can reuse that code. You don't have to keep developing it each time. Now, if I want a new character, I start typing Star Wars character, and I call the new one Luke. Equals new Star Wars character. Again, this creates the instance. And then I can define things about Luke. I can say Luke dot CName is equal to Luke Skywalker. Luke dot jump height is equal to 3. Maybe Luke can jump. Luke dot lightsaber is equal to true. And Luke speed is equal to, probably goes faster than R2-D2, so I'll put 4 down. You still have some definition that goes along with your instance of the object. but you don't have to do all the work that you did before. Now over here, I've declared these. Sometimes when they do objects, they don't like these be public. They don't want you to access it directly. Like if you think about it, when I access this remote control right here, how do they want me to use it?
By pressing the buttons.
By pressing the buttons. It's an interface. So you lock it down. So that's the only way I can work it. By accessing the variables directly within the object, some people really are offended by that. Because it allows you to operate inside the remote, for example. The way around it, and I'm going to show just one variable like this. I really don't like this because it's so tedious, but I know it is the proper way to do objects. Because then you lock down exactly how do you interface with this object. Instead of saying they're public, you say they're private. And see, string and trying to think what other string would be. You said the jetpack, but that's like a boolean. That's true or false, whether they have a jetpack or not. What other string would there be? Their home planet.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Planet. Yeah.
So
Or ship.
their ship.
Maybe.
Default ship they go with, maybe. Yeah. Who knows? So we got that defined. So I got private string ship. Now over here, if I create a new instance, Star Wars character, I'll call Han Solo, equals new Star Wars character. If I try to say Han Solo dot, and you see there is no ship, I can't access it directly. That's because it's set as private. So how you get around that is you create some, and this is within the class, so it's within the beginning curly bracket here and closing curly bracket. You would say public void set ship. And I'll pass in string and I'll call it ship. Actually, let me call it p ship for parameter. And then I say ship is equal to p ship. Then if I want to get that value, you do a public, and I'm going to return a string. So I say string, and I'll say get ship. And this is going to just return ship. So for each one of these variables you have that defines your object, you have a get and you have a set. And they're not hard code. I mean, you can copy this and paste it in over and over, so it's not as tedious as it looks. The 2D example we're going to look at on Thursday, they have a controller class. So the controller is how the character moves. And by defining that over there, then they can change it. They can reuse that for every character they use. So I can, you know how I've been writing them from scratch each time? You know, this, I've been saying the vector2 position equals, you know, this dot transform dot position. I retrieve it and so forth. But it's been exactly the same code, hasn't it? So this is where you can reuse that. Well, let's see how in the world that works then. If I come over here, just like before, I can say Han Solo dot CName is equal to Han Solo. Han Solo dot jump height. Say that's equal to 3 also, just like Luke. Han Solo dot lightsaber equals false. Doesn't have a lightsaber. Han Solo dot speed is equal to 4. Let's say it's about the same speed as Luke. Now, if I want to set the ship, I'll say Han Solo dot, and now if you start typing set, you see there's a set ship. And Millennium Falcon. Like that. So instead of accessing the variable direct, like this, I have to call a procedure, a function, a method. And by calling that method, then I pass in, it's very controlled in what I can do, and I pass that in, and it sets it. Now over here for a Star Wars character, I could have another method, function, procedure, however you want to think of it, public void, and I'll print info. And all this is going to do is print all the information for the particular Star Wars character. So I'll say console dot write line and then I'll type CNAME console dot write line lightsaber console dot write line jump height console dot write line speed console dot write line ship. For too long, we're going to start reusing our classes, create objects for the character movement, and we're going to reuse that so we don't have to keep writing it each time. It's always good to do that initially because then you get to the point where you have it down. But after that point, you don't want to reinvent the wheel each time. This next part I might have to Google to get the exact syntax. I might remember it. So over here, if you want to print out information for Han Solo, you type Han Solo dot print info. Now we said that the ship, we declared it as private, which means you can't access it directly from your instance of your object. But access it down here. How come? Thought I said I couldn't access it directly.
So why is it that you have it down there instead?
How come I can access it directly here?
Because it's in the public one.
That's part of it, but it's contained within the class, isn't it? It's over here. If I tried to put that same console write line over in my program, it would give me an error. Now, if I did want to print just the ship, if I did console.writeLine and I did Han Solo dot get ship, what that's going to do is that's going to go out and call this get ship over here, which all that does is merely returns ship, which is a string. So return string, in this case Millennium Falcon, to here, and then I can print it. Object-oriented programming is a little bit weird at first. It takes you a while to get used to the thought concept.
So where it says public string get ship, everything from there down is all says does not exist in the current context.
On yours?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Everything up here. Like to jump.
That's because you're closing get rid of that closing brace right there.
Oh.
That's closing your class. Make sure there's one at the very bottom.
Oh wow. Okay. I did not see that.
There's one at the very bottom, but it's got a little red on it. What do you want?
Yeah. Another one would be.
Oh, no, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I did not see that one. All right.
Now, we're not limited just to one class. Like that's our Star Wars character.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll create another class here in a minute just to show it to you. Okay, so let's just run this and see what in the world it does. Now to run it, you want to choose your debug. Start without debugging. Otherwise, it'll run real fast and you won't be able to see it. Han Solo, false, 3, 4, Millennium Falcon, and then our second Millennium Falcon. That's because besides the print info here, which printed the Millennium Falcon, this just printed just the ship name. Now this is the part I'm not sure how to do, so we'll see. Star Wars character. And actually, I'm not even sure if I can guess. I always put the brackets in the wrong place. I always choose the definitions wrong. C# array example. INT bracket, then the name, and then equals new. Okay. So I'll say Star Wars character, bracket, Jawa equals new Star Wars character. That might be it. Let's see. No errors. I really want to tell it the size though, so let me look up another way to do the size. C#.net examples, tutorials. Try to make sure I don't go to like a virus. Number right goes right there. So equals new int 5. the idea on this is an example of an array. We haven't really talked about arrays yet. If my game's going to have 5 Jawas in it, if you're like, how many stormtroopers was there in a one Star Wars movie? A lot. Yeah. Some of those cases where they're all lined up, waiting for the attack or something like that, might have been 1,000. Well, if you're going to create those in your video game, you'd have to have 1,000 instances created. It'd be quite a bit, wouldn't it? So instead of doing that, we say that we have a Jawa, and we say we're going to have this many, if I got syntax correct. So then you say Jawa, I think it's bracket, dot, and then you can say CNAME equals Mr. Jawa. You could say 2 is equal to CNAME equals Mr. Jawa. I could give them different names if I wanted to, like 2 and 1, like this. I'm going to copy that and paste it. So we got that right there. Let me change these to 3, 4, and then we're going to see something happen here. 5. So if I ran this, debug start without debugging, gives me an unhandled exception. Reason why is when you're working with an array always starts a numbering at 0. So when I say it has 5, I'm going to have 5 Jawas, you have to start it with Jawa 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And now if I do a debug, start without debugging, it shouldn't blow up. Famous last words, it did. What did I do wrong here? Object reference not set to an instance of the object. Probably was the first error it gave. Door blows up at. Let's see. Debug, start debugging. So I'm right there. Not set to an instance of the object. Now that's got me puzzled. Same setup up here. See how this is a parentheses up here? I use brackets down here. Of course, the question then becomes, I may have to Google this.
Yeah, I put them all in brackets and that is an error.
Okay, array of objects. Let's see if it gives us that. I never can remember how to define arrays. I always have to Google it. I don't know why I can't remember that. Let me just Google array objects. C# array of objects. Initialization. Java equals new Star Wars character. Oh, that's not what I'm thinking. Array of classes. Class objects. Initializing an array of objects. Okay, var staff members equals new employee. Oh, you have to create an instance for each one. Assuming I went to C#. So var equals var. That doesn't seem right. Java equals new Star Wars character. Of course, I guess I stand corrected. It worked. And then we create a new on each one. So Java 0 equals new Star Wars character. No, that should be a bracket here. 5. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. Four, 5. Now let me try to run it. Start without debugging. No errors. Okay, perfect. This tells it the size of it, but then you have to create an instance for each object. Now, if I had 1,000 Jawas, that'd be kind of tedious, wouldn't it? Here, if I'm changing that to 1,000 that's in my game, there's one robot game, Robotron or something like that. I forget what it was. You see like you're in the middle and there's all these robots coming in at you. and you have to go around. And it's like rapid fire. Have you ever seen that game
No.
from the 80s? Let's see. Robotron, I think. Here's where your characters move around firing at all these Robotrons, and I think you try to save people too. I think you have to run across them to save them. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 7, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, roughly 35 robots on there. Well, obviously they all look the same. Yeah, in this case they do, don't they?
Yeah.
So if I was writing a game where I was going to have 35 Jawas, I wouldn't want to have 35 lines of code here. So what you can do is you can have a for loop. For int x is equal to 0, starts at 0, and you continue while x is less than the length of that array. And I think you could type jawa.length. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a method or not. And then x plus plus. And then beginning brace, closing brace. What this will do is it'll start at 0, and it'll go to while it'll continue while it's less than the length, which is 35. So it'll go from 0 to 34, which is what we want. So you can create your instance right in here. You can say jawa.x is equal to new Star Wars character. I could even set different items about my Jawa. I do Jawa x dot cname equals Mr. Jawa. Jawa dot x dot jump height. Probably can't jump very high. 1 Jawa or x dot lightsaber. They'd never use a lightsaber. Equals false. Jawa.x speed. They're kind of slow, so I'll say it's 1. I could even set their ship if I wanted to, but that's probably good enough. So I get rid of all those. And this is a way you can create all those objects and so forth. Now, part of it is that you want them to be randomly spaced around the screen, maybe. To be honest, I don't remember this game. If they're randomly. Probably there's randomness involved, but they can't be inside of a green wall. They can't be on top of a person, or can't even be right next to another robot. Like if you notice, these are kind of all the same distance apart. Well, no, that's kind of closer together there, isn't it? So you could even put a randomness in here. But does that make sense on what an array is and what it could be used for? We're going to see these in examples. It might even be kind of fun to create that, having all those on there. How about those asteroids? Do you think objects might be good for their asteroids? Yeah. Because if you have 10 asteroids on your screen, what did we have to create? We had to create collision detection on all of them, didn't we? Yeah. We had to do the movement in all of them. Well, really, the only thing that's different on a lot of them is the position. So, your X and your Y and so forth. So by using objects, you can assign that randomly, and then you can control it all with just a little bit of code. I could print the info for each one of these, but then that'd be quite a few. Though I want to print it because we didn't set ship. So let's see what that says for our ship. So console.write, or not write line, what am I doing? Java x dot print info. When you call a method, you always have to have your beginning parentheses and closing parentheses. That's oftentimes how you can tell you got a method defined. A method is like a procedure, a function for a class, for an object. And there's printing all my Jawas, but I didn't do the right one. We do debug, start with that debugging. Mr. Java, false, 1, 1, and then it's blank. That's because we didn't set to ship. And part of our code over here was such that we printed off the ship. Is there any questions on that first part? Okay. Now, just to show you, we had Star Wars character, but there's other things in Star Wars, isn't there? Like ships. So I can come over here. Let's see if I remember what I did earlier. Right click. If I had a memory. Then add class. I just want to choose the class here. You notice there's a lot of different classes, isn't there? That's because it's such an important part of programming. It just saves you so much effort. I wasn't as clever, but the guy I worked with at IFR was. He wrote a login for our Oracle database using objects. And then he gave us all the objects. And all we had to do was pass in the user ID and password. And his login had all the security built in so that people, couldn't possibly, use SQL injection or do that. Very clever what he did. Okay, so and down here, I want to change the class name. I'll change this to Star Wars Ship. Then click Add. And come over here and create a new class. So I got a new CS.
What you do? Go to Solution Explorer, go to Console Apps, and go to Add. And then
I went to Add, and then it chose the bottom one, the class. And then down here at the very bottom under name, I typed in star underscore wars underscore ship. And then clicked Add.
class, and then which one is it?
Oh, the top one here.
Oh,
And then I typed in Star Wars ship down here. By default, it'll put the .cs on there for you. And then it comes up, and then you can define whatever you want about it. Public, string, ship name. Public, string, speed. How fast it goes. So that shouldn't be a string. Integer, speed. And that's all set for that. So now over here in my program, if I wanted to define a new object, come down here, and I say Star Wars Ship, MF for Millennium Falcon is equal to new Star Wars Ship, beginning parentheses, closing parentheses. And then I could set MF dot ship name equals to Millennium Falcon. What did I do speed for? Let's try that again. Ship name. And then mf.speed equals 1000. Now, this doesn't show the power of it because I could have thousands of lines of code over here. This could be everything that's defined on a ship. How does it move? How does it handle collisions? Could be everything defined here. And then within my program, I may just have a few lines of code that then inherit all that. So then I can call it, I can move it easily, and so forth. How about TIE fighters? Ones that stormtroopers use. Would that be a regular one like this, regular instance, or would it be array be better? Array. Because in one movie we may have 50 of those, right? How about Millennium Falcon? Would array be necessary? No, there's only one Millennium Falcon, right? So that's when you create an instance, you have to think if I need to define it as an array like this, or is there just a single entity like that? Now there's a lot more you can do with objects. There's inheritance, redefining. Like if I do a console dot write line. You see over here it says void console dot write line. It says 18 overloads. If I do a beginning parentheses, it comes up here and tells me the way that it can be used. I do this drop down. Here's a second way. I can pass a Boolean. I can pass a character. I can pass a character array of characters. Decimal, double, float, integer, long. These are all the ways they're defined. So you can define one method name by calling like where your movement, like your character is moving, but maybe you want to have different parameters based upon whether it's R2D2 or Han Solo, because they move differently, don't they? So, but it uses the same name. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have one movement, period. You don't have R2D2 movement. You don't have robot movement. You don't have Jawa movement. You don't have humanoid movement. You have movement. That's the idea of overloading. And I don't think we'll get too much into that in this class. But if you take a regular programming class, they'll get into objects but who knows? Who knows how far we'll get? Anyway, I'll delete that. Well, the assignment on that is for you to go through and create your own objects. Create two classes just like I did, and you can base it upon a game if you want, if that helps you to easily come up with an example. Games are a perfect example of objects, by the way. They asked us, I think I mentioned last time, they asked us to use objects in the human resources, and we could not wrap our mind around how could we define a simple program to use objects. But game development is just, it's perfect for it.
Yeah.
You could even have an array of walls, right? Because the walls, if you want them to shift for each time, they're all the same basically. You just maybe change the size of them and location. Does that make sense of what I'm looking for now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, the rest of the time to work on that.